All right, he's ready.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. I'd like to welcome Chief Austin to give tonight's invocation.
Thank you, Mayor. Let us pray. Dear wise and loving Father, we pray your blessings upon this meeting and all those gathered here today. And we thank you. We thank you for the opportunity to care for this wonderful community we call Milton. And Father, during this time together, as we go about the business of the city, we pray for our elected officials, our city staff, and the community members that we serve. We pray that you give us all a sense of wisdom, fairness, and justice, that we may all work together to be good stewards of this great community in which you have entrusted us. It's in your most blessed and holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you. I would like to call the regular meeting of the Milton City Council for Monday, July 10th, 2023 to order. The city strongly recommends that you review tonight's agenda carefully, and if you wish to speak on any item on the agenda, then please bring your comment cards to the clerk as soon as possible. While the Milton rules allow a speaker to turn in their comment card up until the clerk calls the agenda item, once the agenda item is called, no more comment cards can be accepted. Will the city clerk please call the roll and make general announcements?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll be happy to call roll for the July 10th, 2023 regular city council meeting. I would like to remind those in attendance to please silence all cell phones at this time. Those attending the meeting who would like to make a public comment, you are required to complete a public comment card prior to the item being called. All speakers will identify yourself by name, address, and organization before beginning your comment. If you are representing an organization, an affidavit is required stating you have the authority to speak on behalf of that organization. Please review tonight's agenda, and if you would like to make a comment, please bring your comment cards to me now. Demonstration of any sort within the chamber is prohibited. Please refrain from any applause, cheering, booing, outburst, or dialogue with any person speaking. Anyone in violation will be asked to leave. As I call roll this evening, please confirm your attendance. Mayor Peyton Jamison.
Here.
Councilmember Andrea Beerhall.
Here.
Councilmember Paul Moore.
Here.
Councilmember Juliet Johnson.
Here.
Councilmember Carol Kirkley.
Here.
Councilmember Jan Jacobus. Here. Jack, how you doing, Jack? And Councilmember Rick Morg.
Here.
Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next is the approval of the meeting agenda. I do have one or two suggestions to council. I would like to move the new business agenda item number 23-168 to immediately follow the consent agenda. Then I would like to add an executive session to discuss land acquisition, personnel, and potential litigation. Do I have a motion on that amendment?
Mayor, make a motion that we approve the agenda with the adjustments that you have requested.
Second?
Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Moore and a second from Councilmember Johnson to approve the amended meeting agenda. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, next is general public comment. Do we have any general public comment?
I do not have any general public comment, Mayor.
Okay, so I'll waive public comment and I will ask you to call the next item, please.
Mayor, the next item are the consent agenda items. It's item A, approval of the June 19th, 2023 regular city council meeting minutes. It's agenda item number 161. Item B is approval of the financial statements and investment report for the period 5 February 2023, agenda item number 23162. C is approval of the financial statements and investment report for period 6 March 2023, agenda item number 23163. D is approval of a construction services agreement between the City of Milton and Continental Entrance Solutions, LLC, doing business as Liberty Door Repair for the replacement of doors to council chambers and the administrative lobby at Milton City Hall. It's agenda item number 23164. E is approval of a customer services agreement between the City of Milton and FEI Behavioral Health, Inc., for the renewal of the Employee Assistant Program. Agenda item number 23165. F is approval of a construction services agreement between the City of Milton and Holbrook Asphalt, LLC, for HA5 pavement preservation treatment, high-density mineral bond. Agenda item number 23166. G is approval of a construction services agreement between the City of Milton and Pavement Technology, Inc., for reclamite pavement preservation treatment. Agenda item number 23167. Mayor?
Thank you. Do we have a motion on the consent agenda?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion, we approve the consent agenda as read.
Second.
Okay. I have a motion from Councilmember Cookerly and a second from Councilmember Jacobus to approve the consent agenda as read. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, we'll move on to the move new business item. Will the city clerk please sound the item?
Mayor, that move new business item is consideration of a resolution appointing or reappointing members to the City of Milton Trails Advisory Committee by appointing a board member for District 3, Post 1. Agenda item number 23168. Mayor Jameson?
Thank you. I'll turn it over to Councilmember Jacobus.
Thank you. It is my pleasure this evening to nominate Taylor Smith to represent District 3 for the Milton Trails Committee. We're extremely fortunate to have an individual with Taylor's background and experience to volunteer to serve on this committee. Taylor and his family moved to Milton 6 years ago to enjoy our rural community. Currently, Taylor is the Park Services Manager for the City of Roswell, where he leads a group of 60 individuals. He has extensive experience with the development, construction, and maintenance of trails. I believe that his insight in this important area will make him an extremely valuable member of the Trails Committee in Milton. Thank you.
Thank you, man. Thank you, Councilmember Jacobus. Any discussion before we open it for a motion? Okay. I'll open it for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we accept Councilmember Jacobus's recommendation for the Trails Committee.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Moore and a second from Councilmember Cookerly to approve Taylor Smith as a District 3 Post 1 committee member to the Trails Committee, which is agenda item number 23-168. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That's unanimous. Taylor, I'll come on up and I'll swear you in, then we'll do a group picture.
This guy is
I do solemnly swear and affirm
I do solemnly swear and affirm
that I will faithfully perform the duties of
that I will faithfully perform the duties of
the Milton Trails Advisory Committee of the city,
the Milton Trails Advisory Committee of the city.
and that I will support and defend the charter thereof,
I will support and defend the charter thereof,
as well as the Constitution
as well as the Constitution
and the laws of the state of Georgia
and the laws of the state of Georgia
and the United States of America.
and the United States of America.
Thank you.
I'm going to have you sign, Taylor. It's a mouthful, wasn't it? Thank you very much.
There you go. You guys are in good spots. Here, actually, you know what? Can you scoot 10 a little bit this way? There we go. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, we will move on to reports and presentations. Will the city clerk please sound the first item?
Mayor, that first item is a proclamation recognizing the Cambridge High School girls and boys track and field teams. Mayor Jameson?
Great. Thank you, Tammy. Well, it's a great night when you have a room packed for a proclamation. I tell you, I read this proclamation, and it goes to show you that y'all have worked tremendously, and y'all have worked for numerous years for this achievement. And it goes to show you that if you work hard, good things usually pay off. And so I will tell you that everybody here within the city of Milton is very proud of you. So I'm going to read this proclamation, and then we'll do a group picture, and I'll hand the proclamations out to you. And this is the proclamation that's recognizing the Cambridge High School girls and boys track and field teams. Whereas track and field is a challenging, rewarding sport requiring discipline, hard work, and a determination to improve individually while forging invaluable relationships, developing as people, and contributing to a team. And whereas the Cambridge High track and field team exemplifies the best of this sport, as well as the best of that school in the greater Milton community. And whereas the Bears boys and girls team recently completed their greatest collective season on record, whereas for the first time in school history, both Cambridge High's boys and girls teams won regional titles, besting 5 competitors each in Region 6 of the Georgia High School Association's 5A division. And whereas these athletes went on to excel at sectionals and eventually the 5A state championship held from May 11th to the 13th in Columbus, Georgia. And whereas Cambridge girls finished second at states, scoring their most points ever, and while the boys had their own highest ever point total and placed 6th. And whereas Julia and Lila Berluce won individual state titles, while numerous Bears set school records over the course of their impressive 2023 campaign. And whereas Milton is proud of all these athletes' accomplishments, and is importantly their excellence in the classroom and for being outstanding young citizens. Now, therefore, we, the mayor and the city council of the city of Milton, hereby recognize and celebrate the Cambridge High School girls and boys track and field teams for their remarkable achievements and great representation of our community. And this is given under our hand and seal of the city of Milton, Georgia on this 10th day of July, 2023.
Yeah, if y'all could, we're going to take a picture. You can stand around in there.
Don't walk up here, picture. You might want to get a little tall. Okay, cool. Actually, you know what? Scoot over. Guys, you guys scoot this way, and then bottom row. Scoot more this way.
That's the lowest
Yeah.
we've ever had.
Should I go up there?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. If you're a coach.
Well, you get one without me in it.
Yeah.
All right.
Ready? 3, everyone looking? And then you guys go, do your things.
All right, congratulations.
Okay.
Y'all are more than welcome to stay and listen to other stuff. I was joking. There you go. Okay, will the city clerk please sound the next item?
Mayor, that next item is the fiscal year 2024 budget preparation, discussion of the 5-year forecast. Our Deputy City Manager, Bernadette Harville.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, we are going to continue with our series of budget preparation and feedback presentations. This will be the 6th meeting in our series and will focus on discussions related to operating expenses. The objective of these meetings has been to engage council early in the budget process in order to obtain feedback and guidance. In meetings 1 through 4, we discussed the phasing of some of our major capital projects, and in June, we met for the 5th time and discussed economic development initiatives that will inform our projections for the fiscal year 2024 budget, as well as the 2025 through 2028 forecasts on the operating side. Tonight's focus will be on sustainability planning and related goals as outlined in the city's strategic and comprehensive plans. Here we have the topics that have been discussed to date. And due to our meeting schedule in June, some of the 5-year operating forecast topics have continued into our July meetings, but we will be well prepared to have the draft budget ready and the millage rate hearings and the budget workshop in August. Based on the digest data that has been provided by Fulton County, staff is projecting that we will only need 1 public hearing for the millage rate rather than the 3 that are required when an adopted millage rate exceeds the calculated rollback rate. In years past, we have adopted the final millage rate at a special called meeting immediately following the August budget workshop, and our current fiscal year 2024 budget schedule has contemplated the same for the summer. Following the setting of the millage rate, a final version of the proposed budget will be drafted and presented at the September 6th meeting, and a final vote to adopt the budget is scheduled for September 18th. Milton's budget is guided by plans which are outlined in each year's budget book. Some of these plans cover citywide aspects, while others are more focused on an individual department or initiative. These plans have received public input and have been formally adopted by council. The 2 overarching plans that staff use to guide budgetary decision-making are the strategic plan and the comprehensive plan. Each of these plans has taken into consideration the other planning documents that already exist, including Parks and Recreation master plans, transportation, pavement, and stormwater plans, Milton's capital improvement element, and more. Tonight, staff will be seeking feedback from council related to some of the initiatives outlined in the strategic plan, as well as the short-term work program from the comprehensive plan to ensure we are budgeting the correct funds in the year in which council would like to see these initiatives come to fruition. Tonight, we'll be discussing those initiatives related to sustainability. We have our Public Works Director, Sarah Leaders, our Environmental Program Manager, Emily Groff, and our Facilities Manager, David Bergmeyer, with us tonight to provide council with context and information related to each of these initiatives. There are many sustainability-related initiatives incorporated throughout our plans. Some of them have budgetary implications, while others do not. Sarah, Emily, and David have worked to organize these initiatives under 3 main categories: recycling and solid waste management, electric vehicles and energy savings, and green infrastructure, stormwater, and land protection. The feedback we are seeking on each initiative is the same used for the economic development at our last meeting. You can see the scale located here, numbered 1 through 4, with 1 being the highest priority, and staff should aim to address this in the fiscal year 2024 budget and include any potential funding within that proposed projection. Number 2 being a moderate priority, with staff including funding if needed in the fiscal year 2025 through 2028 projections. Number 3 being a low priority, with any funding needed being contemplated in the future year past the 5-year forecast. And finally, number 4 being an initiative that council would not like to pursue and would like removed from the plan regardless of any funding needs. As Sarah, Emily, and David present, I will take notes as we have in the past few presentations so we can come back to you with a plan that incorporates all that feedback. Turn it over to Sarah.
Good evening. I'll start with highlighting a list of some of the short-term work program projects that have already been completed. And we wanted to list the project number with it. It just is a number assigned through the comprehensive plan. So every time you see a S.3, S4, those are just identified projects from the comprehensive plan. So this is a list of what we've completed. These are, most of these had limited or no cost related to the project, and they were primarily completed with staff time, and some needed city attorney review time to implement. So I'll be happy to come back to any of these you want to hear more about, but I just wanted to show what's been completed so far. Next, related to current and future budget considerations, as well as working towards the short-term work program, Public Works staff recognizes the following needs and purpose of the proposed projects to address these needs. So under recycling and solid waste management, what we're seeing is a need here is from what we've heard back from the community related to dissatisfaction with current conditions, lack of services and options. And the purpose and projects that we'll propose are a recycling and solid waste management plan, a Milton Sustainability Advisory Committee to aid in making some of those sustainability initiatives and recommendations, and then improved services and options for recycling. In electric vehicle and energy savings, the need is the EV demand, as well as the unknowns related to EV infrastructure and the future of EV. Related to energy savings, what we're seeing as a need is for our facilities for asset efficiency, and then overall how we can look for cost savings across our fleet and facilities. And the projects we'll propose to address this purpose are looking at EV readiness, how we manage our assets, and reducing our EPA mileage for our city administrative fleet. Lastly, green infrastructure, stormwater, and land protection. The need there is to protect environmentally sensitive areas as well as preserve the natural ecosystem. And with that, we're going to be looking at projects for citywide policies and goals to support those. So we'll be sharing a slide on each of these that will show the project information. We'll recap this needs that I've summarized here, as well as looking for feedback on potential opportunities for the upcoming year or the future. And now I'll turn it over to Emily to start with the recycling.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you, Bernadette and Sarah, for opening this up. Tonight, I'm here to discuss some ongoing sustainability initiatives and seek direction regarding the funding and prioritization of these projects. We'll start with the table that you see here. It highlights all the various projects that speak to the identified goals in the strategic and comprehensive plans. You'll see each project in their respective slides further in the presentation. We'll first take a look at recycling and solid waste management. This includes proposed updated recycling solid waste management plan, which would highlight improvements to our ongoing recycling efforts and our annual city sustainability events, with the assistance of a sustainability advisory committee. With an updated plan and improved systems, we'll be able to address ongoing resident concerns and deliver on one of the CPAC priority projects, S2, to develop a citywide solid waste strategy as well as a citywide recycling strategy. And we can also address Goal 3, Objective 1 of the strategic plan to identify opportunities to improve the management of solid waste collection that aligns with sustainable best practices. In the next few slides, I'd like to review the feedback and support we've gathered over the last year, starting with the National Community Survey. Respondents were asked to rate the quality of Milton's recycling and yard waste services. In 2022, only 35% of respondents were satisfied with recycling, and yard waste only slightly higher at 45%. Now, it's noticeable that this dissatisfaction could be related to labor shortages coming out of the year 2020. Last year, we also offered a staff-led survey, which gained a lot of traction with over 650 responses. In this question, 82% of respondents generally supported city-funded sustainability projects and initiatives. This support can also be felt in our successful glass recycling program. This photo on the left shows excitement and engagement regarding some new educational signage and accessible stairs at our glass bin at Bell Memorial Park. And on the right, you'll see data gathered during the planning process for the comprehensive plan. At that time, 71% of respondents were unsatisfied with their current services, and 85% of respondents were in favor of further collection opportunities. Regarding this feedback, staff is proposing an updated recycling and solid waste management plan with funding for industry expertise. This plan would include elements such as improving curbside collections, ongoing events, expanding our recycling options, and the opportunity to collect farm, horse, and yard waste. It would also support public education and involvement to empower residents with confidence and reliability in our services. Milton's first and only plan was adopted in 2009 and expired in 2018. Milton has grown since then and landfill capacity has changed, and we're continuing to improve and manage our in-house options for recycling. If supported, staff could engage the Sustainability Advisory Committee and complete the plan by 2025. With an updated plan, Milton can continue to grow and support its residents while providing quality services for all. I'll stop here for initial questions and feedback. Regarding an updated plan in FY24, staff is looking for planning support and assistance with the Sustainability Advisory Committee. And it's also important to note that the next few slides may also be incorporated into an updated proposed plan.
All right, questions for Emily? Anybody?
I have one. Hello.
Hello.
Go back a couple slides when, I think it was 3 slides back about the negative comments. There you go. This one, first of all, with the trend downward, but how many people responded? There's a couple slides that don't give the universe of what we're talking about. It sounds like a small amount of people. I'm not saying it's not credible, but you know what I mean?
This is the National Community Survey, so this was about, I think, several hundred, but these are the weighted surveys. They're statistically significant scientific surveys. So in that way versus the other surveys, which are anyone can take, these are a representative cross-sampling of Milton residents. So in that way, even if it was only, like I would say, I think around 500 respondents, but that is taken across, measure the statistically significant, and all that stuff is measured in. So,
But in the national surveys, it doesn't necessarily mean that anybody in your community.
oh no, this is all for Milton. These are Milton. These are the National Community Survey taken by Milton residents in a cross section of only Milton residents. That makes sense.
But it still begs the question, how many?
Well, I mean, around 500 or so.
Are you sure?
I will get the of number for sure. But I mean, this is all, and it's different from the online surveys. Like, so this, if you had a survey that's statistically significant of 400 versus one that has 600, that anyone with an internet who can be from anywhere else. So
No,
what it's worth. Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Emily, could you go to the next slide? This slide here, where the city of Milton financially support. So they reply yes, that they would like the city to financially support that. But what we don't add to that is whether they're willing to pay higher taxes in order to do that.
Right.
So one of my concerns about when we do these type questions, we don't give them the option of saying, would you be willing to do this if it meant the millage rate would go up and you'd have to pay higher taxes? I think we've got to get that buy-in. Of course, everybody would like the better service, but are they willing to pay for it themselves?
Right.
So Emily, are there any decision points you want us directly right now, or is that later?
We're hoping for some guidance to move forward with a proposed and recommended plan. So we can kind of roll through the other slides that may play into the plan, and we can kind of group it all together at the end.
So is there like a dollar amount on that plan, or is that?
What's that?
So is there like a dollar amount that you're on the plan, or?
Yeah, so in FY24, we're proposing funding expertise at $35,000.
Okay. And that 35,000 includes what exactly?
Like data gathering for current data based on population, economic growth, landfill capacity, traffic patterns, municipal tonnage annually by residents. Very data-driven to be able to make better decisions. It would be a piece of the pie with this graphic here. It would also.
So are you kind of saying we need that before we can do anything else, basically? Is that?
Yeah,
correct?
we can do that way, or we can kind of come back to it at the end. There's a few different things that I want to touch on immediately after this slide, including our events, recycling programs, and moving forward with the committee.
All right, if council's okay, let's kind of go forward and then we can come back to
Okay,
that.
well, just a
There you go.
quick question. So in your vernacular, solid waste is household garbage, right?
Yes, a plan would also speak to any improvements and constraints with businesses and commercial.
And then farm, horse, yard waste, stuff like that would be like more construction and demolition debris or something like that. They can go to a different type of place.
Yeah,
Okay.
analyze
So-
under, yep.
In that, in doing this plan, is it to move to a single provider and to figure out if that's the direction that people in the council want to do, a single municipal provider?
I think that can be a talking point. I think it can be just considered whether or not that's best practice in the
Okay.
industry or.
So you're going to find that
with
out
Milton.
rather than it's a foregone conclusion.
Right, yeah, it'll be a topic of how we go forward with improving our best practices.
Okay. Good, thank you.
Emily, I'm confused about the 35 grand. Do you need our direction on whether the 35 grand is okay to move forward with in order to accomplish some of these things? Or what's the product without the 35 grand?
A consultant for an updated plan.
Okay, so in that case, of course, I would support the 35 grand because it allows you to go forward to be able to make a legitimate assessment with all the professionals that you need, plus the community input to make it happen. So,
Right, yeah.
I mean, that would be my,
It's almost like you got to do that first.
Right.
Then everything else can come.
otherwise you're spinning your wheels guessing and you don't have the professional input that we're going to need to be able to make good decisions. I mean, you use solid waste as the example. We know that one of the considerations in a rural community like we've got is a solid waste single provider is going to be able to meet the needs of our equestrian community and do the long driveways on some of the estate homes that we've got, et cetera, et cetera. And we got to take some of those things into consideration. Without the ability to go forward with that funding, you're not going to come up with a reasonable result. So of course I support the 35 grand.
And I'd suggest too, when you look at that, when you do the survey, look at what other cities are currently doing, find out what the success rate is, find out the number of complaints, because I've owned properties where we have a single waste hauler, and I know some of the challenges that you run into. I also know, I've heard what comes to the city then when someone doesn't pick it up on the day. So I just ask that you look at existing cities that are doing it and find out how well that's working as part of that study.
If I could build on that too, not just existing cities in the surrounding area, but other similar communities that we've looked at in the past that have some equestrian similarities, that kind of consideration.
May I ask for just clarification that we're okay in 2024 to be including that $35,000? Okay, thank you.
I'll go forward with a couple other just touch points and highlights of what we currently have ongoing that could be a talking point in an updated plan. I'd like to touch on our current recycling options and how we can continue to improve them. Currently, recycling can be found either in curbside through our waste haulers, our annual recycling events, or our glass collection at Bell Park. Last year, 70 tons of glass was collected and diverted from landfills to be used in paint fillers and insulation. That's about 380 pounds of glass a day. Most recently, we secured grant funding from the Georgia Environmental Protection Division to purchase recycling bins to collect items like plastic film, cardboard, aluminum, small electronics, and we're working to roll out this infrastructure this fall. So this shows that to date, Council has already invested in the community and has made important strides in working to expand these options for residents, and it's proven very successful. Future expansions to our programs can be included in the plan, as well as proposed partnerships with regional recycling centers to promote fiscal and environmental sustainability in North Fulton. A partnership could include offering collection point access to all participating cities, as well as a voucher program with a prepaid utilization rate that can be passed through a cost profit sharing opportunity to an annual capped number of residents. And so for this one, I'd like to stop here for feedback regarding this planning element and potential partnership approach in FY24.
Questions for Emily?
The question, I know we've had challenges. In the past, we were able to participate at the Roswell Recycling Center. Alpharetta was able to do that too, and then they kind of shut that down. Are we still, our residents not able to go and drop stuff off there? Is it still exclusively only Roswell?
Yes, that's correct.
You know any reason why they made that restriction?
I'm not sure. I think there's just been ongoing staff conversations. I think it may be just their determination on any budgeting or fiscal impact on their side. But at a staff level, we've just kind of been going back and forth with potential opportunities. And with your guidance to move forward with those conversations, I think we could continue that discussion.
I mean, to me, it may make sense if we can in fact get cooperation like we do with our police and our fire.
Right.
We can do something like that from a regional standpoint, maybe with a few cities. I'm sure there's more efficiency than us trying to run our own city of our size. I think that's part of, it'll be interesting to see what the economic numbers you come back with and what options there may be.
And Councilor Moore, I've met with Mayor Wilson 3 times probably in the last 18 months asking him that question. So I know staff's trying to find a win-win with Roswell, but it's becoming difficult. So.
And so the ask here is exactly what?
So we kind of don't really have, we need to continue conversations with staff about any budgeting impact on both cities. Really rough numbers. Right now, it's just kind of conversation based. But for this one, could be interest in FY24 for funding to move forward with a program like this, or the next 5 years, kind of tying into Bernadette's general prioritization of a potential program.
I have a question. Have we had any conversations with Johns Creek and Alpharetta regarding the three of us developing our own recycling center that all three could use? Has that been discussed at all or considered?
We haven't specifically talked Milton, Alpharetta, and Johns Creek. I know Johns Creek utilizes a nonprofit called Keep North Fulton Beautiful. They operate recycling centers in Johns Creek and Sandy Springs. So they kind of have their own operation going. As far as Alpharetta, I haven't talked with Alpharetta specifically about going in on something like this. They utilize a lot of their land off of like Maxwell Road and their public works buildings for infrastructure that they have going on.
Council members too, I'm out of my league a little here, but I will say that Forsyth just entered into a 90-day pilot program with Johns Creek. So Johns Creek residents could use one of the Forsyth County South recycling centers.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's actually good to know if we have conversations with
Yeah.
Roswell.
And on that
Specifically.
topic, Forsyth County just updated their plan last year.
Yeah, I will say recycling is probably one of the top issues that I get emails and complaints about. And it's hard because you can't really control it, but if
Right.
we can give some options and, that kind of that are, taxpayer friendly and partnerships and grants, I think we should probably try to use them. So,
What goes hand in glove with our waste management assessment too, for assessing those large haulers that are stepping away from recycling, and it's leaving us holding the bag, and we're left to strike these other relationships. I think it has to be a top priority for us for this next budget window, because you can't. I don't want to leave folks hanging. We know that the success of the glass program at Bell Memorial. That's a huge success, and applaud your efforts to make that happen for us, Emily. So thank you very much. Let's look forward to doing that kind of partnership that serves our community.
Yeah, good things, Emily. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
we're good. Thanks, Emily.
Pick her out yet?
Is that it?
No.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
Thanks and continue.
So we've referenced the sustainability events tonight, and I'd like to review them and plan for any proposed improvements. Most notorious is our annual paint and hazardous waste collection event. This event is critical to keep harmful chemicals out of our water and environment, and it allows a unique opportunity to dispose of traditionally hard to recycle materials. This event requires funding to staff the event, package, handle, and dispose of anything collected on site. We've received several inquiries already this year about this coveted fall event. What's most felt in the community regarding this event is the limited access to participation. It's expensive to dispose of these materials, and last year we saw about 220 registrations. This can be offset in the future through cost share opportunities and additional events to divert just paint, which is the event's most popular material. Additionally, we provide an engaging Earth Day every spring that allows our communities to interact and learn from impactful organizations, and we support our local schools with an environmental education grant. And at minimal cost to the city, we oversee the Rivers Alive stream cleanup, Christmas tree recycling, storm drain marking, the Adopt a Road program, and electronics recycling. These events help to create a lasting impact in the community and engage residents in their city's investment towards a clean and rural Milton. Improvements and expansions to these programs can be accomplished through an updated plan and with the engagement of a sustainability advisory committee. I'll stop here for feedback regarding this planning element and to include any additional events or cost-sharing opportunities, most notably for the paint and hazardous waste collection event.
The paint is a real pet peeve of mine because I get a lot of calls from all the people who can't get in. So my recommendation would be that we don't do it for free. That if you bring a 1-gallon can, you pay X. If you bring a 5-gallon drum, you pay X. And maybe we can offset some of that cost. But I think more people are interested in having a place to go, not necessarily having to pay for it. I think most of them would be more than willing to pay if they could go. So if we can expand that by charging for it, I think we should. I think that would make more sense, and I think we'd help more citizens that way.
And have it multiple times or at least twice a year. I'd be
Done
willing,
twice,
yeah.
but
That 220 last time, Emily, that was capped. That was 220 because
It
that's all.
it was full in an hour.
Right.
Yeah, you
And-
usually account for like between $100 and $120 per head last year, and this FY23 at $30,000. So the most immediate consideration would be an increase by $15,000 in 2024 to either host additional events for paint and improve collections at this event.
I also think sponsorship opportunities on something like this, like we do in other events.
Absolutely.
I just really don't think we should do it for free.
Yeah, because if you don't do it for free, kind of like what everyone was saying, was you can probably spread that out to more events and get the same impact on the budget. So maybe something to think about.
I think most people don't realize that it costs that much to dispose of the hazardous materials.
Yeah.
So I think if the community is educated around that, on why,
Right.
to Jan's point, if we go that route and you charge people to dispose, then I think they'll be willing to do that.
May I ask for a clarification point? Is council okay with us leaving the current amount that we do budget in there and then expanding it using the paid program?
I'm fine with that if we use it to kind of do what Andrea is saying, is use that dollars to educate people about what we're doing, and this is what it'll cost you, sending out maybe flyers or something. But I really don't want to allocate dollars to pay for the paint.
Okay, so tiered back kind of over time. Okay, thank you.
And this has been an event that's always, when we do them twice a year, it's always packed. Now people are just waiting, and as soon as they hear it, boom, the phone line's open, they're calling. So if we could do more, but maybe you can, in your education or whatever, actually survey and because most people want to just get the paint out of their house.
Right.
Yeah.
And if it's $1 or something, they may be willing to do it, schedule it, get in line and do it several times a year. That may be a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. So the last talking point related to this first topic, recycling solid waste management, is the Sustainability Advisory Committee with no budget consideration. This committee can support these events that we just talked about, future projects like green communities and proposed planning initiatives. We do have one appointed member, and staff has the opportunity to assist in further appointment recommendations. This group would be beneficial in keeping Milton clean and green while still advocating for the rural heritage that our residents enjoy. So to close, there are several related projects that have the opportunity to expand with the guidance of a plan and support from a council and resident-led committee. So I understand that was a rather comprehensive overview, so I'll stop here for any outstanding questions and general guidance related to this committee.
I think you just need us to appoint people. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
But-
In a nice way?
But if you happen to have resources available to suggest, we would certainly appreciate that. Because I
Absolutely.
know that there's a particular, at least base level knowledge that you'd like to have as part of the committee.
That's
And
right.
that isn't easy to find.
That's right. Yep. Representation of Milton's user groups, like folks that live on gravel roads, farm owners, that would be important to include. Okay, Bernadette, do you have everything for, cool. All right, so we started with a little bit more complex project first. Using a similar format, we'll discuss the prioritization of electric vehicles and other energy efficient initiatives. We'll be discussing EV infrastructure or charging stations on public and private property in Milton and a proposed ordinance to support that growth. We'll also discuss energy savings through efficient fleet and facilities. These projects are driven by various goals in the comprehensive and strategic plan, most notably S1, to identify cost-neutral city investment opportunities in renewable energy and lower emission vehicles, as well as EPA mileage tracking and the increase of EV charging stations in Milton by 5%. We'll start first with the discussion of electric vehicle infrastructure or charging stations. This topic is becoming more relevant within the North Fulton community. Staff has attended multiple roundtables hosted by Georgia Power with the cities of Alpharetta and Roswell. The demand for EVs is steadily increasing, and such as the demand on utilities. So Georgia Power has made strides to promote EV readiness in our communities. EVs are quickly becoming a statewide economic development engine. 2 large manufacturers recently came to Georgia, investing over $5 billion each. And just last year, Fulton County claimed 9% of the market share. So to meet this anticipated demand, staff has identified some proposed projects that we'll highlight tonight. The first one being a funding opportunity from the Department of Energy. Eligible projects for their energy efficiency and conservation block grant include planning projects to prepare for clean energy and equipment funding, both with the intention to support energy efficiency. David Bergmeyer, our facilities manager, will touch on this later tonight. Another option is an EV charging station demonstration project with various options for procurement. Utility and EV companies offer a host program where they install and maintain a charging station on an approved site, allowing the city to offload ongoing expenses, but still provide the service to the community. Similarly, there's an opportunity for cost and profit sharing with these companies to recoup fees from EV users. Lastly, the city could explore procurement and management of its own equipment. These proposed projects would support the identified task to explore investments in low-emission vehicles and increase the number of charging stations in Milton. And tonight, we're looking for feedback related to interest level to explore these possible funding opportunities for EV charging stations. Proposed FY24 funding impacts would be related to the grant that I touched on in the last slide that we'll be discussing more in depth at the upcoming work session. So I'll stop here, and considering any initial feedback, we can prepare further information at a future meeting.
Just a question, so that it sounds like you've got, there's potential opportunities for people to help with the installation of the charging station. Who pays for the electricity?
So it's kind of worked out through a contract with the utility and the EV energy company. Sometimes you can just provide the host site, just provide access. Other times you can kind of work out different options for access and maintenance.
I know we had a little discussion on this last time. Concern I'd have is I don't want to start subsidizing energy for certain sectors, the people that can afford or have the chargeable vehicles. I don't think that's our role to actually pay for that. I'm all for, renewable energy systems that make sense.
Right.
I know Councilman Cook early last time talked a little bit about the whole impact to environment for electric vehicles and batteries. We don't hear about that often. We just hear, oh, this is good, it's better, but there's another side of it that we're not talking about. My immediate concern would be, I don't want to see us subsidizing power for one type of vehicle. Taxpayer dollars going just to those folks. I don't think that's the right way to go.
Do we know how many electric vehicles are registered in the city of Milton?
I don't know how many electric vehicles are registered. I can find that for you. We do have 2 stations right now in Milton.
Okay.
Emily, is the ask, if I understood it correctly, there's the grant application program that could potentially pay for this study.
Right.
That's going to take place first, and short of that, will that happen, the award or not award happen fast enough that we know whether we need to be funding ourselves for the study, or what's the number 1, number 2 in terms of steps?
So I think we can take independent courses. If we're interested in a demonstration project, we can work that out through an RFP with all of those 1, 2, 3 options and kind of test it out and gain more info on who uses the power, who pays for the power, and things like that. That could be an independent track, just a one-off. But we can also incorporate how to move forward citywide through the grant application and through any interest in funding for a preparedness or readiness plan.
I mean, I'm absolutely in favor of pursuing the block grant funding. Then, depending upon the outcome of that, assess whether or not we need to invest ourselves or supplement or whatever. I think we have to be EV aware. I mean, we have to be advancing with the times, but I also think that if we can do it with government funding, let's take advantage of that and not ask our taxpayers to pay for that.
But yeah, I think in the short term, we'll have more information coming about that grant, and these conversations can continue.
Good. And you walked away with several questions from us last time we discussed it. Look forward to some of the answers on some of those things that we asked last time when you're ready.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, everybody good with that?
Yeah, I kind of want to just reinforce what Rick said. I'm not in favor of this hitting the budget line at all, as far as the cost of stations or the cost of using them. If we can come up with a way to get them there and then have a user fee for whoever plugs their car in, puts their credit card there as well, that's great. If we're just the catalyst to
Right.
bring it together, that's a good thing.
Right.
But I don't think people that don't have would really appreciate the fact that we're subsidizing.
Oh, yeah.
Unless we can get like temporary gas station where I can get a little gas when I park at the place.
There you go. All right, yeah, I think this is good. Bernadette, are you good? Cool. So last talking point on my end, there's no immediate budget consideration. This is a related project to support this growth. We could explore ordinances for public and mixed-use developments. Some comparable ordinances include the City of Atlanta and the City of Alpharetta, regulating either the percentage or number of parking spaces that require a charging station. Right now, Milton has 2 stations located at the Bethany Bend Publix and Kohl's. So an ordinance or a charging station can be achieved together or independently based on available funding and prioritization. I'll stop here to discuss the interest in an ordinance, and after that, I'll pass this to our facilities manager, David Bergmeyer, to discuss other energy-saving efficiency projects.
I'm going to hand it over to Councilor Moore. He was whispering. I'm like, that makes sense. What he just
I would
said.
just think that what we talked about with the study, if you can get the money, my recommendation would be we do that first before we really consider, like, what are we going to do for parking percentages and that type of thing. Let's find out really a little bit more detail before we go down that path.
Yeah, I think once we get all the data and everything, we'll be better. Yeah. Council okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good.
you.
Thanks, Emily. Appreciate it.
Good stuff.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm going to touch on a few topics regarding city facilities and fleet. The first opportunity is related to fleet sustainability. In order to achieve outcome measure of reducing EPA mileage year over year, we're proposing a development of a policy to guide future fleet vehicle purchases. Similar fleet policies I've seen include purchasing hybrid vehicles when function isn't impacted and total life cycle costs are within 10% of traditional vehicles. This wouldn't have any immediate impact financially. It's simply looking at developing a policy to guide future decision-making and purchases regarding fleet. There may be a future impact financially, but we don't imagine it being significant. A couple other opportunities related to facilities that kind of work hand in hand. The first being a facility condition assessment that would help us make data-driven decisions regarding facility asset investments and improvements. Deliverables would include an asset condition and inventory report, capital plan, and cost estimates. There's possible funding through the EECBG grant that Emily mentioned before. And we can dive into that further next week during the work session. And finally, the third opportunity I'm going to talk about is for facility efficiency that would utilize asset management system. This would drive down total cost of ownership through improved asset reliability, availability, and lifespan through optimized preventative maintenance and replacement. An asset management system would also incorporate streamlined work order system and assist with some financial pieces, including depreciation, operations budgeting, and capital planning. We anticipate this to come in somewhere in the range of $60,000 to $80,000 for the first year. Typically, that price comes down after the first year after implementation. If you have any general questions, I'm happy to answer them. And if not, we'll just hit on each individual topic.
What would the 60 or 80,000, what would that include? What would that buy us?
That would be a software package to utilize an asset management system, something we can create work orders, track our assets. It's really a software package.
Okay, and do you have, are we gathering data on the cost difference between the vehicle types, like for a fleet vehicle, that would be a EV vehicle versus gasoline or some other type of thing, and then operating costs, air costs, that type of thing?
We don't have that currently. We started using a fleet management system that's gathering that data, but we don't have that ourselves. We can do some research and try and get some answers generally, but as far as us specifically, we don't have that data yet.
60 or 80 would just be to get a fleet management software program to then start looking at how we would manage our vehicles.
So the 60 to 80 isn't related to the fleet. These are I grouped three different topics together. So the asset management system, that would be the 60 to 80. We could incorporate utilizing that for fleet, but we do already have a fleet asset management system. So that's unrelated.
So this would be like the facilities and the ability for someone to put in a ticket so our facilities manager could oversee and know exactly what's going on at all the fire stations, the police department, and all the parks and recreation buildings, and be able to determine sooner if something's going on there as opposed to our Excel spreadsheets.
Okay, so that's asset management. That would include building repairs, anything that happens at any of our different facilities where we need repair, including potentially fleet cars that need repairs.
It would help us better track our assets and how much we're spending and how much time we're, spending to maintain those assets.
Okay, thank you.
Do you think that the investment is going to be offset by the savings? And if so, what kind of return and how quickly?
We think there's definitely value. We definitely believe the value exceeds the cost. I don't have specifics on, are we going to save, so many dollars based on, where we're tracking how much time we're spending or how much money we're spending, but it would allow us to track that better because we don't have a good system.
I get that
currently.
part. I mean, 60 grand is not an insignificant amount.
Correct.
Can I point out one other quick thing? Sarah mentioned it will also do all of our infrastructure, so all of our roads, stormwater features, everything like that. And our auditors have mentioned throughout the years that we do need to have a higher functioning program than an Excel spreadsheet at the point of the growth that we've had. So you've seen that in the management letter. So this would also check that box for tracking those systems financially through like David mentioned, the depreciation and actually all the assets.
So it would give us different components, different parts that different departments could look at for what they manage.
Basically, everything we have other than the vehicles, I would say would be contained within this program. And then we would tie the vehicle piece in through that one report from the current fleet management software we use.
Yeah, we should not be using Excel spreadsheets for this stuff. I mean,
Yeah,
that-
formulas
just the
and-
error. I mean, you make one error and all of a sudden, boom, that's 60 grand. So that kind of
Correct.
right there.
So there's really three decision points. The first being, do we want to move forward with a fleet policy to help us guide our purchasing decisions moving forward? No financial impact, just do we want to look into establishing a policy?
That's easy.
Yeah, so no cost, but it
No
gives us
cost.
the benefit to actually start getting data and be able to quantify.
Yes.
Yeah, to me, it makes sense.
Okay. The second being, do we want to move forward with a facility condition assessment? This cost would be around 60 to 65,000, but we believe that the EECBG grant would cover this cost. We would be able to cover this with that grant. Are we?
Match on that, or would they cover it 100%?
I believe it's 100%. Correct. Yeah. Are we in favor of moving forward, looking at the EECBG to?
There's no cost to making the grant application, correct?
Correct.
So, yes.
Okay. And then lastly, are we in favor of the asset management system? Somewhere
Yes.
in the range of
Yes.
60
Yep.
to 80 for FY24. Yeah. All right.
Did a grand
Awesome.
slam there.
Appreciate it. I'll turn it back over to Sarah.
We're on the home stretch.
Yeah, last one. And Scott Takach, our city engineer, is here to help me if I misspeak on any of these. He's the expert related to stormwater. But we feel like these are more policy-based decisions, and we'll get into each of these three, that we don't see immediate financial impacts on any of these projects. First of all, related to green infrastructure, again, no immediate budget considerations. And what the comp plan recommended was a citywide green infrastructure policy. And green infrastructure can be looked at kind of in 4 different areas. First of all is how it handles rainwater, from rainwater harvesting to bioretention areas and rain gardens, just a way to control rainwater without piping or underground systems. With landscaping, it's also related to those rain gardens or using swells with plantings to handle the stormwater runoff. In hardscape, it's looking at pervious surfaces, landscaped areas. In transportation projects, it's maybe doing the stormwater drainage in a landscaped area versus in an underground pipe. And then related to buildings, it's looking at green roofs and how the gutters on a building drain into a more natural area. And the second part of the comp plan was to, based on the green infrastructure policy, is to set certain goals related to that. And not quite sure what that could look like. So it's just a matter of, is this a important topic that you would like us to come back and discuss some policy and ordinances we could look at to encourage and use green infrastructure? And related to those policy and ordinances, that if we're looking at that citywide, it could have effects across how we handle new city buildings when we do facility improvements. Public works infrastructure projects, we could incorporate elements of this with those, and then private development requirements. So those 3 things could in the future see some cost increases by making these sort of investments, but it is a good thing for the environment and a way to handle and control rainwater. So the main decision point on this one is if there's an interest in us spending staff time to do some research and bring some possible policies and ordinance discussions at a future meeting this year.
Sarah, thank you. How much of this has ARC already done?
So we do have the model stormwater ordinance that talks about a desire to use green infrastructure, but this would be setting a little higher of a goal on projects to use more of the green rather than the what's referred to as like the gray infrastructure. So there are some standardized policies that we already are doing, but this is just to increase those, is what this identified.
Okay, because my understanding was that they've done a lot over the last 20 years on, for example, stormwater. So rather than having to go back and reinvent everything, whatever is in their treasure trove. Look, I'm interested in anything that brings this information forward, but I also like to know if there are merits to following a green policy. What are the demerits? What are the deficiencies? Because it's, there's a counter to everything. That nothing's like perfect. So sometimes that's left out of the narrative. So I'd like to see both sides of whatever's proposed. Be great in the future.
Sure, we can look at maintenance cost across
Sure.
what a concrete pipe costs to maintain
Right.
versus a landscaped area.
We're having some problems with windmills in some places, but it would mention. So whatever, just so that we see the whole picture. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Sarah, are we still doing, I know there was a program we started maybe a couple years ago with the street stormwater catches, which people think they can just, blow their grass or leaves or anything in, but they end up going to detention ponds and sort of clock. There was a sticker program. I was just up in Philadelphia and I saw almost the same sticker on all the stormwater things. Is that something we're still doing in the subdivisions along the street to encourage people to be a little bit more ecologically minded when they're cleaning up around their house instead of just blowing stuff down that thinking it just goes away?
Yes, we have a storm drain marking program that we utilize volunteers to go and mark those, and we're trying to redo that program a little bit to make them more visible. We currently have a real small sticker that goes on the catch basins, but we're also looking at a custom lid that would say City of Milton and have our logo on it, and then about drains to stream. And so we're working on a couple different ways to improve that, but we do have the storm drain marking program as part of our MS4 permit. That's one of our measures, is that we do go out and mark those routinely.
And is that something you'd said volunteer? Like if we had a subdivision that wanted to do that, if there were people that were interested in helping out to glue, I think there's glue and a few other things, they're not just self-adhesive. Is that something we could talk to you about?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Okay, thanks.
Else? All right.
Okay, so we'll talk green infrastructure at some point in the near
Thank you,
future.
Sarah.
Sure. Yep.
All right. And related to that, the stormwater component of this item does overlap a little bit with green infrastructure, but this also looks at land protection investments. Like the other one, there's no immediate budget considerations, and this was also a comp plan project that recommended citywide updates to stormwater and land protection. And the land protection components related to this are like the wetlands areas and slopes. And we have some codes and ordinances in place related to protection of steep slopes, but looking at a more best practice for how wetlands are protected. It also looks at some possible policies related to areas where the groundwater can reach back to the water table and recharge, and then water harvesting and reuse. That's kind of related to the stormwater control, a way to reuse the water rather than having it just go into an underground piping system. So the needs with this were to prioritize the protection of some of these environmentally sensitive areas like the wetlands and the slopes, and to reduce the impacts on the natural ecosystem and to maintain a more natural drainage path area. And similar to the previous item as well, the comp plan recommended setting some goals related to these. Again, we're not quite sure what that would look like, but as we get into researching policies and ordinances that help protect these environmental areas as well as maintaining the ecosystem is something we will consider. So possible opportunity for the upcoming year is to discuss these at a future meeting, with the impacts being similar to before, is how we handle these on our projects and future improvements, as well as what we would look to require of private developments.
Yeah, no budget considerations, so of course, yes.
Okay. And last one does have some potential budget considerations. The item was to explore available options for a stormwater utility fee. And in the short-term work program, that was identified to look at that in 2024. And with the current ARPA funding that has been available for eligible stormwater projects, there hasn't been the immediate push to look at how we support our aging stormwater infrastructure. There's many municipalities in the metro area that have stormwater utility programs, and the graphics that I put on this slide were from the Johns Creek research. They just implemented a stormwater utility fee in 2021. So it shows some comparable jurisdictions and what their rates are, and then it breaks it down across different square footages of the impervious area on different residential units. So again, the purpose of this is it's a funding source to address aging infrastructure with the stormwater pipes. A lot of this, the underground piping systems that were in place well before we became a city, and to offset future damage, repair, and replacement cost. This item would require some substantial staff data collection and analysis, and likely some outside support to run some of these scenarios. We need to look at our stormwater system needs as well as financial scenarios, and then evaluate what different options for rates are, different residential versus commercial, if it's based on impervious area or a flat fee, and then looking at where we can apply credits for those that install green infrastructure and aren't contributing as much to the new piping systems. So really for this upcoming year, with all that we have going on in Public Works, we're recommending to hold on this for the upcoming year and possibly revisit in 25, or if you all are interested in exploring it at all. I did want to point out it is an option under the strategic plan. It somewhat gives us another revenue source to consider in the future, but just trying to get direction if there's an interest to hold it for a year, hold it for multiple years, or to not consider it any further. So.
Well, it also depends on your workload. I mean, the team's workload. What's your recommendation?
To hold it.
Definitely at least hold it 1 year.
And I think you had those priority lists. I think it would be on the bottom so we
Right.
can get rid of the other stuff first. So, yeah.
Okay.
And maybe you'll have more data too on, because today, out of our city taxes general fund, we are doing the repair to infrastructure. I'd be interested when you come to that point, what is the cost? What are we finding? Because a lot of our area, we call it rural, but it's a lot of subdivisions where it goes into streams. You may have the street collectors, but then it goes into a stream and then it goes into a detention pond. And today, the subdivisions are at great expense are the ones that are maintaining the detention pond. So before we start assessing additional taxes, and that's what this would be, I'm all for putting it off, but then gather more data of what our actual operating costs are to see if it makes sense and we can still cover it without having to assess a new fee on residents. I think that would get a little bit tricky because if you're in a city and it's all paved but that's not what we have. A lot of ours are more rural and subdivisions.
I'll offer a couple of comments on this, and I know we're not doing anything on it. It looks like we're going to set it off, but I've been at ground zero on a couple of these in some of the jurisdictions I work in, and Sarah's done a great job of going over it. This is very helpful, but I will tell you that the cost and the bureaucracy of the government to pull off one of these, depending upon the extent of the program, and I will tell you that most of the companies that do this, the consultant, they will tell you that there are models of the stormwater. There's the Cadillac, and then there's maybe lesser gradients of how far, in fact, the local jurisdiction is, in fact, providing this service. So one of the things that I'm going to emphasize to staff if this begins to get legs is to look at what some of the original estimates were of the cost of these programs in jurisdictions that have done them versus what the actuals were. Because stormwater is one of the most labor-intensive issues that I deal with from a liability perspective. And once a government touches it, you own it.
I think you just answered our question.
But not attempting to dissuade you at all, of course.
That helps. Thanks.
Yeah, I just think the more facts we can have to make a decision, look at costs, look at what is the repair, what's the estimated repair cost, and look that in the big picture before we start saying we're going to start assessing and collecting more taxes for different things. Because once you start that, you never go away from it.
Anybody else?
I'm the only one who feels
Sounds good. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
that. Thanks.
I want to thank all of our staff members for their time in putting together all this information. So we've now concluded the feedback portion where we're getting all these 1 through 4s and what year, red light, green light, yellow light, all those different iterations. I appreciate your time and all the information you've given us. We'll be back next week with a little more information for you that looks more like the formalized plan that you're normally used to seeing, and all of this will be incorporated into that.
Yeah, it was
Thank
very
you.
helpful for us and I think for y'all too. So we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we will, that's all our reports and presentations. We'll move on to first presentation. Will City Clerk please stay on the item?
Mayor, that item is consideration of ZM 2301/VC 2302 located at 850 and 875 Hickory Flat Road, currently zoned C1 and AG1 by Old Crossroad Properties LLC, Mr. W. Curtis Mills Jr. for the following request: to modify Condition 2A to the revised site plan received by the Community Development Department on April the 5th, 2023, to develop a restaurant and events facility in the following 4-part concurrent variants: to allow the new Village Center Building 7-acre breakfast and pavilion to be set back more than 10 feet from Hickory Flat Road. Number 2, to allow parking in front of the newly constructed restaurant. 3, to eliminate the requirement for parking lots to be divided into small contained areas through the use of perimeter landscaping and canopy trees and eliminate parking lot landscaping. And 4, to reduce the number of minimum required parking spaces required by use within the C1 zoning district. It's agenda item number 23135. Mayor Jameson?
Thank you.
Mayor, just a point of order on this one, if you will, very quickly. I mean, we've received a letter from the applicant seeking to withdraw this, and I do think that rather than go through a first presentation and then placing of this on a July 24th agenda that's just going to add confusion to it, I would respectfully request the council simply make a motion to withdraw this without prejudice, and that'll this one.
That sounds good.
Let me do that.
Yeah, any council questions for Ken?
No.
Okay. Open it for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we withdraw this first presentation without prejudice.
Second?
Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Cookerly, a second from Councilmember Moore to withdraw the first presentation item without prejudice. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, we will move on to, there's no public hearing or zoning agenda. We'll move on to unfinished business. Will the city clerk please sound the first item?
Mayor, that first item is consideration of an ordinance of the City of Milton, Georgia, to amend Chapter 56 of the Code of the City of Milton to update the definition of personal transportation vehicle and for other lawful purposes. Agenda item number 23154. Mayor?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Before we begin this, unfortunately, due to continuing pending litigation, I need to excuse myself from participating in this item.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Moore. I guess turn over to City Attorney Ken Gerard.
Mayor, thank you, and council, thank you all. And I do have a PowerPoint, and Tammy, I think I've decided to go ahead and put it up. If we could go, though, if we could go to slide 7. I'm not going to do all of it. Council members, y'all remember that we had a fairly exhaustive PowerPoint on May 15th of this year, where I went through sort of the slides providing the genesis of this modification to our PTV code. And so rather than give an entire background on the state of the law from 2012, I know it's very interesting, but I think we've already done that before. I thought I'd start with the actual initiation of the city's PTV code and really what we're attempting to do with this modest modification. So as you'll see on your screen, in 2020, City of Milton, taking advantage of the state law, we did in fact adopt our own PTV ordinance, and not surprisingly, we used the very definition of PTV that is baked into state law. PTV obviously meaning personal transportation vehicle, with the 4 criteria that such a PTV has to have a minimum of 4 wheels, capable of a maximum level ground speed of less than 20 miles an hour, maximum gross vehicle unladen weight of 1,375 pounds, and capable of transporting not more than 8 persons. We go to the next slide, please. Thank you. Continuing forward, that's just additional language out of the code that is baked into our ordinance. But then you see that second bullet point that also provides that in addition to those criteria, these PTVs have to have these 10 additional, what I would call sort of safety elements added to them. And this is where I'm going to say, you have to bake those into these vehicles to make them, how about this, street legal. That's what makes these carts street legal. And we have, of course, incorporated that into our code. If we can go to the next slide, please. Under the city's code, PTVs are allowed only on streets that are under the regulation and control of the city, in other words, city streets, and have a speed limit of 25 miles per hour or less, and have been determined by a qualified engineer to accommodate PTVs without adversely affecting traffic. Keep going. Now, this is where we get into, the next slide, please. This is where we get into sort of the reason for us having this modification. From a state law perspective, the phrase PTV and golf carts are not interchangeable. Under state law, the term golf cart means a vehicle uniquely designed to only operate on a golf course and would not be a street legal PTV. However, In the city's 2019-2020 discussion of the PTV ordinance, there were instances during the discussion, to include both the presentations of staff, to include the council's discussions as well, where the terms golf carts and PTVs were in fact used interchangeably. In addition to that, there are other jurisdictions that have included references to golf carts in their PTV code. And this is my interpretation, but as a means of aiding in understanding the concept of what we're talking about. And why? Because if you ask 10 people on the street what a golf cart is, most of them would know or have a pretty good idea in their head of what that looks like. If you ask them what a PTV or a personal transportation vehicle is, most folks would either not know or would be challenged to understand exactly what that meant. And I say that sort of, I'm not going to say confusion, but that lack of clarity, if we can go to the next slide, please, is even manifest in many of the advertisements that we see about these, even street legal PTVs are still using the lingo of a street legal golf cart. And I've just put some easily locatable graphics to show that. And so that was very easy to do.
Hey, Ken, real quick. So that right where it has street legal golf cart, so that would be considered a PTV?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. And I think that's the one you have, Mr. Mayor, that $13,000 PTV. Not yours, or yours.
Oh, I'm sure he tricked his up well beyond that.
Got the neon lights. All right. So in any event, yes, that's right. These would be, and I think that's, and Mr. Mayor, you make a great point though. You know, they do emphasize street legal. And that's to indicate they have that additional safety equipment that renders them a PTV. All right. We can go to the next slide, please. So in doing the research for this, and I think this was some discussion by council as well, there are a host of municipalities that have baked in some sort of a tether between PTV and golf cart. And I think once again, it's designed to provide clarity and just, avoid some of the confusion of what this means. And I'm not going to read all this language for you, but again, you got Flowery Branch, and they use the statutory term PTV, and then they use the parenthetical to include golf carts, but these were presumably drafted by somebody that knew what they were doing, to include golf carts meeting the definition of, and then they're referencing later that street legal addition of safety equipment. That's why they're using that language. And so if we can go to Roswell, and again, I'm going to be very, very quick now. To the next slide, please. Yeah, so Roswell does the same thing. Once again, has their generic PTV definition, but then has the parenthetical to include golf carts meeting the definition. If we can go to the next one, please. The next, Woodstock, again, the same thing. Their nomenclature is a little different. They now call it a modified golf cart, but again, we're all talking about the same thing. Something that people in their heads think is a golf cart, but has that additional street legal safety devices, thereby rendering it a PTV. Go to the next slide, please. Canton, once again, the same sort of building in that cross-reference to golf carts. Go to not the next slide, but the next one after that, please. Thank you very much. Duluth, doing the same thing. And continue where I can close. If you go to the next slide, please. All right, so this is going to be the end of this brief overview. You asked for me to look at what some other jurisdictions have done. I have done that. And so my third bullet point is important. The fact that they reference the term golf cart does not mean that they are allowing unauthorized vehicles to operate on city streets, because there is a statutory and state law definition of golf carts, and that's not what we're talking about here. We are talking about sort of the historical colloquial term for these sorts of devices. The reference to golf carts in these other jurisdictions appears as my language, historical reference point to alert citizens that those devices that have historically been described as golf carts, and to which we even described in some of our initial discussions about this ordinance described as golf carts, that they may operate on city streets, so long as they are modified with that additional safety equipment as will render them street legal. And the final slide, if you don't mind. And so the language that I have recommend, if we want to do what some of these other jurisdictions has done, is simply the language in red. and that is a cross-reference back to BTV. The term includes vehicles traditionally called golf carts, so long as they satisfy this definition and otherwise comply with City Code 5694. Mr. Mayor, that's my presentation, and this is up for the council after public comment. If you wish to adopt, you could.
Great. Any questions for Ken before public comment? Okay, I'll call for public comment.
Mayor, I'd like to invite Mr. Dan Pike to the podium, please.
How many minutes is this? Is it?
It's 10 minutes
Per side.
per side.
Oh, so it's a zoning. Okay, got it. Okay.
Good evening. My name is Dan Pike. I live at 15415 Tramer Manor View. Last November, at the 2022 City Council meeting, 2 years after the ordinance was passed, the 2020 ordinance, Ken, you talked about 2019, 2020. This was 2 years after. A city staff member made the statement that, quote, "From a city staff perspective, we use golf cart and PTV interchangeably," unquote. He was talking about in meetings, internally, staff conversations about PTV and golf cart matters. He further said, quote, "Our city code references PTVs, i.e. golf carts, i.e. golf carts." So I think this is consistent with what Ken had just talked through. So internally, the city staff has a very clear understanding of what these things are, but the rest of us are supposed to stay confused. So what harm might come from this confusion? I want to talk about that for a couple minutes. I've shown this picture before. This is a 1994, can you see this? 1994 club car golf cart. You can see what the red arrow is pointing at. It's pointing at seats for people. It's not pointing at seats for golf clubs. So I'm going to flip this back here so the folks can see. What do you think the intent of this vehicle called a golf cart was? We know from its use in Peachtree City and other places that traditionally one intended use was to carry people, including on streets. So at the time, any law or business contract or any other type of binding agreement involving this vehicle would have envisioned the use of carrying people on public streets. But today, Milton's PTV ordinance enables those with a certain intent to view this ordinance as changing the very history of traditional golf cart use, and therefore trying to invalidate such earlier laws or binding agreements. It's fundamentally illogical, it's unfair, and it's harmful. And it's all enabled by omitting the traditional description of these vehicles from the ordinance. One such argument, and again, I think Ken touched on this, is people use, one argument that they use is that PTVs are an entirely different beast because they required safety features. I have a couple other more pictures I want to hang up here for you to see. This is a 1968 Chevy Camaro. It's an automobile. This car has no seat belts. 68. This is a 1997 model Chevy Camaro. This model has no airbags. But today, both safety features are absolutely required for these automobiles to be sold. Yet, they're still called automobiles, and that term is still used in lawmaking, in contracts, and binding agreements. Changing the safety features to not change the intended use or what they're called in lawmaking. So sensibly to me and to all the people who are here today behind me, joining me today, let's make sure that Milton's PTV ordinance accurately preserves in its language the history of use and the intended use of these vehicles. They're essentially, in our mind, golf carts, traditional golf carts with added safety features. Thank you.
Thank you. Will you please call next
Mayor, I
speaker?
invite Karen Kemper to the podium, please.
Good evening. My name is Karen Kemper, and I live at 15315 White Columns Drive. I appreciate that the city is considering a clarification of the terminology in the golf cart PTV ordinance. My neighborhood's HOA documents are clear that golf carts are not allowed. Those documents were written almost 30 years ago before the term PTV was used. Most of the golf carts that I see in my neighborhood have small children in them. Last night, when I was walking my dog, I saw a grandma and grandpa in a golf cart with their 2 young grandchildren in the back. Grandma was pointing at things to look at while the children facing backward were squirming to see. The little boy, a toddler with a pacifier in his mouth, and his sister were only restrained by a lap belt. This isn't the first time that I've been caught off guard with seeing children at risk in golf carts on our streets. This past December, I saw a woman driving a golf cart with a baby on her lap, holding them with her left hand while she steered with her right. And about a month ago, I saw a couple with an infant driving a golf cart with the baby in the woman's lap while the man drove. I can't imagine any of these people transporting their children in a car that way. This risky behavior is just mind-boggling to me since our HOA has so often mentioned that the White Columns streets rank among the most sped upon in Milton. In fact, our HOA requested that one of the radar speed signs in our neighborhood be moved to a more appropriate location in the front of the neighborhood, and the city amended the permit to allow the HOA to do so. Unfortunately, that has not yet happened. Ironically, this morning, someone passed me as I was driving my car out of the neighborhood, almost in the exact location where that sign is supposed to be relocated. I shudder to think of what that impatient driver maneuvering behind golf carts with little children in them. I hope you will vote tonight to clarify the terminology in the ordinance so our HOA and other HOAs can safely enforce their bylaws and covenants. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I invite Mary Cronk to the podium, please.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Mary Cronk, and I live at 600 Hickory Mill Lane in Milton. I don't live in any of the White Columns communities. I'm here to support the proposed text amendment because I think, as the summary of the agenda item says, this amendment aims to align the city's regulations with the initial intent of City Council and the identified practices in neighborhood municipalities. And I ask that you approve this text amendment tonight. And I thank you, as always, for your time and your careful consideration of issues like this that impact our wonderful city.
Thank you.
That concludes public comment.
Okay, thanks. I will close public comment and open it for any questions or discussion at all. So Ken, just one question, so no miscommunication moving forward. PTVs are still allowed on city streets after this ordinance if adopted tonight, correct?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Just one clarification too, and I know this was part of the long discussion we had. If a subdivision or a HOA has a restriction on golf carts, we never intended to invalidate that when we did our PTV ordinance.
I agree. And again, I'll say this because I've said it before in here. The city of Milton, at least from the perspective of my office, is not reviewing private covenants as it is drafting its ordinances. And so we don't intend anything with respect to covenants. I've been listening to all the same comments that you all have, and I understand that may have been the consequence, but it was by no means intended.
Okay. Any other discussion? With that, I'll open it for motion.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we approve agenda item number 23-154.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Jacobus, a second from Councilmember Verhoff to approve agenda item number 23-154. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
5-1 with Councilmember Moore abstaining. Or
Johnson?
just not here. Would that be appropriate?
He is not participating.
Not participating. Okay. All right, with that, will the city clerk please stay on the next item?
Mayor, the next item is the new business item, consideration of a contract. Bear with me. I went too far. I'm sorry, bear with me. It's consideration of an ordinance of the city of Milton, Georgia to revise and update speed zones and regulations regarding vehicular speeds within the limits within the city limits and to provide for enforcement of those regulations. Agenda item number 23155.
All right, the city identified the need for a local road safety plan in 2019, and that actually started from an initiative that we put together to collect and analyze speed limits throughout the city. And the local road safety plan was adopted in August of 2022, and that supports both the strategic plan goal as well as the objective of the local road safety plan to make improvements to Milton's transportation network through engineering, education, and enforcement that respects Milton's rural heritage, enhances the quality of life, and makes our roadways as safe as possible. Our plan had 6 emphasis areas, and the one that relates to the speed limit discussion tonight is the vehicle speeds emphasis area. The local road safety plan looked at engineering, education, and enforcement countermeasures. You can see here the top 4 engineering countermeasures, and 2 of these were going to be related to this speed limit ordinance discussion. First of all,
Is there a slide?
There is.
There we go. Thank you, Sarah.
Okay, so these were the top 4, with engineering review of posted speed limits being one, as well as looking at establishing specific speed limit zones. In our action plan for the plan, the Phase 1 were the first projects to look to implement, and this was also the list of the highest priority projects. You can see the number 1 on this list was to study and review possible changes to posted speed limits. So we started just after the local road safety plan was completed. We counted 10 different roads, looked at daily volumes, speeds, average speed, where bicycles are frequently used, and as well as looked at neighboring jurisdictions and the road speed limits approaching the city limits. And from those 10, we selected 3 that we felt like were good candidates to submit to DOT. That's how speed limit evaluations work. For it to be part of the radar permit, the state DOT has to review them first. Then they recommend the list of roads, which then we present as an ordinance, send back to DOT, and then they send to the state to update our radar permit. So these highlighted are the 3 that were part of round 1. Again, we counted 10 roads and we selected these 3 based on some criteria to look at an incremental and systematic approach. So these were submitted to DOT last fall, and we just have received the list of roads with updated speed limits for Providence Road, the segment that's highlighted. Let's see if the arrow will show up on the screen. There we go. Providence Road from the roundabout at Freemanville all the way to the city limits. Bethany Way, the entire length between Haygood and Hopewell. And then the southern section of Freemanville from the roundabout at Freemanville, Providence, down to the city limits approaching Mayfield. We also took a look at a possible speed zone. So we have a short section of Mayfield Road. Most of it's within the most recent Mayfield district area as well. It's between the signal at Birmingham Highway and the roundabout at Charlotte Drive, Heritage Walk. And so we looked at reducing the speed of that section, removing it from the radar permit. It's a very short section with controls on both ends, so we are proposing to lower that one for that short section. Okay, and this shows those roads at the new list of road approved speeds that we received back from DOT. So Freemanville will drop from 40 to 35. Providence will drop from 45 down to 40, and it'll match the section between Birmingham Highway and Freemanville Road that's already 40. Bethany Way will drop to 40, and it matches the Haygood and I think that's Bethany Road. I think it changes name right at that intersection, but it'll match those speeds. And then Mayfield will drop to 25, and that's similar to the speed of Heritage Walk, which I'm pointing out here that connects the Crabapple area. And just to give you a preview, we're already looking at a round 2. We've gotten some feedback from DOT. We know the criteria that they're looking at. And so we're proposing to do a study task order with the same consultant that helped us prepare the first 3, who also did our local road safety plan. So they're able to reference the plan and show that we're looking at other things besides just speed limit reductions to improve safety throughout the city. These are still preliminary, but these are the ones we're looking to collect counts and prepare the engineering studies on for the next round. And most of these do adjoin roads across the county line and city limit that are different speeds. So Hickory Flat, where 35 meets 45, Hamby Road, where 40 meets 45, Batesville, 35 meets 45. And then we're going to look at possibly another segment like we did on Lower Freemanville to see about lowering Bethany Road. And lastly, Cogburn, another southern segment of road to look at lowering that one. And lastly, Green Road connecting 35 mile an hour Crabapple Road over to where it changes from 35 to 45 right at where it intersects State Route 140. So these are, again, we're going to prepare studies and do counts. They're not guaranteed that we'll get these lowered, but we feel like this could be the next preliminary list of roads to consider for future speed limit reductions. And again, it's all based on what the study shows and what our engineers are able to document through the report. Has to be submitted and reviewed by DOT, which is several month long process, but we're hoping to collect the data and get these submitted hopefully this fall is the timeline. So the item for consideration tonight is the updated list to match what you see on the map here with the round 1 speed limit reductions. And I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Questions for Sarah?
You can go ahead.
Go ahead. Sarah, I totally support the list that's going forward right now and look forward to that happening as soon as possible. I think that there's some also that make a lot of sense in the second round that you're looking at, but I still think we are woefully short of a couple of superhighways that we have that we know are going to still be a ridiculous nightmare in our city. And Freemanville happens to be one of those north of the roundabout where you're suggesting it's already 40 from 45. You're going to take the section that's 40 down to 35 and still leave the 45 at 45. How does that make sense? I'm not mad at you. I'm just mad at the process that still leaves something as egregious as that out there without being addressed. And it's not going to be addressed in the second round either. I know that that's not the only one that's like that. I just don't understand how we miss something like that.
There are some roadways where we would like to try some additional measures along them, whether it's the radar signs or there's some repaving and striping that are going to happen as well, that we'd like to get the speeds lower before we tackle those, with Freemanville and Hopewell being 2 of those that we're proposing under the upcoming SS4A grant. We're going to look at those 2 as ways to bring in some additional striping, marking, signage, some things we can do to try to get those speeds lower, and then they become better opportunities to study and reduce the speed. So we studied
the letters I get from the angry community about the fact that they're getting passed at ridiculous speeds. And I'll use Freemanville as the example. It's countless times on double yellow that they're getting passed at outrageous speeds. And yet we're lowering the speed on southern Freemanville from 40 to 35, and we're still not even touching the north part that's at 45. And that's the best example I can give you because I drive it every single day. I experience the passing myself. We have the radar signs up. All I do is watch those cars flash at speeds that are well above the posted speed limit. We've just got to take a more aggressive approach on getting some more of these listed ASAP.
Sarah, is it fair to say, to go on Councilmember Moore's point, is it fair to say that, this is done by data in order to give this to GDOT, that you're saying these have the highest probability of being accepted? Is that part of the reason why something like that is not on there higher up?
That is, and part of it is and now that we've got the southern section of Freemanville lowered, it's going to make a easier case too that, well, south of Providence is already 35. It's a good transition to go from 35 to 40 versus 35 to 45. So that is a component too, is we wanted to see how successful southern Freemanville was with the data and with the presentation to DOT. And yeah, Freemanville and Hopewell are definitely on the radar, and we were hoping to get the speeds down a little bit through some other measures, with those two being, the major north-south routes apart from State Route 372, which is DOT controlled. But we'll look at, we haven't completely finalized that round 2 list, so let us look at some more data, and if we feel like, and ask our engineer for input as well, and feel like if we should focus on some actual implementation of some measures first on those 2 routes, like with what we're looking at with the grant, or if they see those as good candidates for this study. So we will take a look at it before that comes back to you.
Thanks, Sarah.
So, because I'm not sure that I really understand the process, these roads have always been good candidates. So is that a consultant's decision on what they stack up to go first?
Right, it's a candidate based on kind of more on DOT's thresholds and their criteria.
So that better explains it. So it continues up Bethany Way because you can hear it, you can hear the speed. I will say that having driven Freemanville recently quite a bit to go up to go to Birmingham Road that way recently, I'm just amazed. I mean, I don't drive like old granny, but starting to think that, wow. So look, my only thing is you can try all the measures you want. It was when I've seen the police down on Providence and on Bethany Way and everywhere else that it's made a big impact. And I would just say, go for the police.
Do it.
That's where the impact is. And thank you, because I know you've worked hard on this and I'm very appreciative. So thank you.
Councilmember Moore?
Yeah, I appreciate what you've done. I think that those are great candidates, even the round 2. I kind of echo what Carol said and also what Paula said. On North Freemanville Road, you got a very straight, easy way for people to speed. We can put up signs that say slow down or whatever. The people there are still going to speed. And what he had mentioned about passing, I just think North Freemanville, I think we've got to get it to a point where it is 35 miles per hour. And the sooner you can make that first step to get there, I think the better. The other one that I guess I'd ask you to look at, I'm glad you're looking at Bethany. Because that stretch of Bethany Road is still a speeding, even though it's 40, people are still flying down there. But I ask you to also take a look at Bethany Bend, because Bethany Bend is notorious for people flying, even past Highway 9 in the stretch, Highway 9 over to McGinnis Ferry in that area. It's 40, but people are going 50. It's hard to pull out of subdivisions. I just think if you could look at adding that, we're going to do Cogburn South. I'd ask that you take a look at Bethany Bend for the same reason. And then I know this is not your purview, but I think if we could have the police, none of us are looking for speed traps or trying to make revenue by having tickets. But I think I'd like to hear Chief Austin come back and kind of tell us, where are we giving our tickets? Are we giving speeding tickets out? Because like you had said, Carol, when there's a police officer there, the word's going to get out if people actually start getting tickets for their speeding. And we've had some deaths, unfortunate deaths over the years. I just think the sooner we can do this, the better it is for ours. And one last thing, kind of unrelated, we haven't talked about. We have one road, Wood Road, that is a 15 mile per hour speed limit. Is that an enforceable speed limit? We list it as 15 miles per hour. Is that really enforceable?
That's more like the specific speed zone where it's not, on the radar permit, it's listed at 25, so it's only enforceable at the limit above the speed limit, like the typical state law.
So it's really technically 25, and we still, that's not this meeting, but I still have a concern of safety of mixing pedestrians, using that as a trail, and then having people be able to drive down there, just because I've seen people almost get hit, little kids on little trikes and things. It's just, I still think now that we've opened up more of our parks, I think we need to, either through the trail committee or through us, take a look from a safety standpoint. Do we want to continue to still have that designated as a trail, or do we want to officially make it a road, which is what it really is?
Derek, can I ask a question about that too, real quick? In our packet, there was the chart that had Wood Road in particular caught my attention, like it did Councilmember Mooring's. Help me I thought that what the chart was showing me was where it's posted 15, that we can only enforce at 25. We can only use speed detection devices like a radar at 25 or above. So is that what the chart was saying, was 25 or above? Or is it suggesting that we're moving it back from 15 to 25 so we can actually enforce at 25?
The list of roads is setting the maximum speed on the roadways. So we can, if we post less than that maximum speed, it's only enforceable at that maximum speed. So we're not proposing to change how Wood Road is in the permit.
Okay.
At this point.
I know I would get some phone calls if we were going to take the speed back up. So,
yep.
Thanks for
Councilman
clarifying.
Jacobus?
Yeah, I have a question going back to what's approved under the speed zone on Mayfield Road. When we make that 25, does that mean that in that section now, PTVs can drive on there?
They could, yes, they were on the PTV map for Crabapple area that was shown as a line of a potential speed limit reduction as well. So as soon as they reach the state route designation or the roundabout, they would need to get on the side paths to continue if that infrastructure was in place, but there's not the system yet connecting that road to any multi-use paths. So it would work on Mayfield Road and then on Heritage Walk, but that's the limit of where they could drive.
I'm concerned people getting on that section and using the roundabout. I don't know. I just think we're putting ourselves in a little bit of danger maybe by making that 25 and people thinking they can drive on that and not realizing that they can't use the roundabout. Because I think we put PTVs in roundabouts, we're asking for problems.
And again, this may be more for Chief Austin, have him come and talk to us about PTV and enforcement, because I just had an incident just in the last week where I was eating over at the Italian restaurant on the south side of Crabapple Road, Campania, I think is what it's called. And as I was leaving with my family, I saw a golf cart / PTV with a husband and a wife and two little kids speed across the state highway across Crabapple. I think we haven't had, thank God we have not had any accidents yet. This is a new ordinance, but I think we need to look at enforcement and actually awareness, because I know someone else had called me. They had the same thing where someone on Birmingham Highway was coming from one of the subdivisions and they wanted to try to get over to Crabapple Marketplace, and they went out on Birmingham Highway, pulled out in front of a car. They were almost hit. So that maybe is an awareness. We can talk to Chief Austin both about the speed, enforcement of speed by the police, and also start to look at what are we doing from a PTV thing. And is the PTV licensing or the stickers, is that under you or is that under the police department?
We're hoping to come talk to you about it possibly at the work session.
This
Just
next
kind of an
work
update
session?
on where the registration is. So
Okay, that would
that's
be great. I'd love to hear that.
hopefully
Thank you.
coming at the work session.
Thanks.
Sarah, I had one quick question to kind of build on that, and then I won't take up any more of your time. But with school starting soon, I've had a few folks in the Crab-Apple area ask me, since speeds are reduced on Birmingham Highway to 25 miles per hour during school hours, are PTVs allowed on Birmingham Highway when it's reduced to 25 miles per hour to drive kids to school?
So from what I've seen with the DOT state regulations is they allow PTVs on certain width side paths, but even if it's 25, they don't allow them on the street. And Ken may know if there's a state law that regulates how the state DOTs control the roads, but
Okay.
their regulations do set up, and we're looking at a project for how to get some side paths along Birmingham Highway to accommodate those. But even if it's 25 during a school zone, I believe they say no PTVs on travel lanes of the state route, but they do make provisions for that side path.
Okay.
That's what we'd heard before too, is you can't, doesn't matter what the speed is, you can't take a PTV or a golf cart on a state highway.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious because it's come up several times in conversations. And they're like, they think they can drive their kids to school when it's reduced to 25 miles per hour. On Birmingham.
Maybe we could have communications actually put something out about this whole subject,
Mhm.
reinforcing and trying to tell, based upon things that we've seen, actually get the word out and talk about safety and safety with children, that type of thing.
I have a question, bit of trivia. At what speed is a typical airbag deployed in a car crash? Do you know?
I do not know that.
Anybody know?
I don't know.
Yeah?
No, I don't know.
I almost thought it was a trick question here. I don't know.
I thought you were doing a lawyer thing. You knew the
I know.
answer before you
I
asked.
wanted to see if anybody knew, but I don't know. But it's interesting because I think it is low, like 25. I think it's 25 or 30, something very low like that. And when you think vis-a-vis just a golf cart going at that speed, the little kids, I don't know, something to think about.
It's dangerous. All right. We good, Sarah?
We're good.
All right. Any other or any public comment?
There's none, sir.
No. Close public comment. And is there a motion? Going once?
Mr. Mayor,
Where's my agenda?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion that we accept, you're asking us to accept the proposed speed limit. We're not talking about future, we're talking about
or you just.
proposed
the
reduction.
item.
Just approve the agenda item, basically.
Agenda item
Okay, then
number
we-
23-155.
I make a motion that we approve that agenda item.
Second?
Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Morrig and a second from Councilmember Johnson to approve agenda item number 23-155. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. Moving on to new business. Will the city clerk please say on the item?
Mayor, that item is consideration of a contract with 10-8 Fire and Safety LLC for the provision of an engine pumper apparatus to the Milton Fire Rescue Department for Station 45. It is agenda item number 23-169. Our fire chief, Chief Gabe Ben Musa.
Good evening, Mayor Council. I have a presentation. Okay, so initially when we talked about what type of apparatus we should get for Station 45, we had talked about getting a quint ladder. And that quint ladder was, once we get it, we were going to move it over to Highway 9 Deerfield Corridor, because that's where we have most of the apartment complexes, commercial, where we require the water flow for ISO. So we went back and looked at pricing and cost. And cost has significantly gone up for fire apparatus. So that same quint, which you see the picture that we purchased 2 years ago for 1.3, is now about 1.9. This is just in the 3-year. Overall price for apparatus have gone 300% from 2007 when we first started when we purchased our first units, 300,000%. So adding to that, there is a new EPA emissions standards for diesel motors for fire apparatus at a cost of $100,000 for these new diesel motors. It's called the Packer. That's the brand. And we're looking at almost a 3-year delivery from the time we order. So we went back and looked at how can we creatively save some money, maybe leverage some of the apparatus that we currently have. And our plan was to look at purchasing a stock engine. So a stock engine essentially is like it's the manufacturers will produce so many a year, and those are for departments that wreck their engines or they lost an engine in a catastrophic, like a weather event. They can just go right off the lot and buy it. So they make several of these, not many. It just depends on the production. So those are stock engine. There is no customization, nothing. So we actually found 3, and I'll pull the list, and they were around $700,000. So a stock, that's with the old diesel motor, which is the Cummins versus the Packer. And they only have like 4 or 5 left with that. So any orders moving forward for any new engines will have the new Packer engine, which is at a cost of about $100,000 more. So it's driving the cost. So a stock engine, sort of like right off the shelf, off the lot, that we don't customize. You basically just do the paint scheme and that's it. Compared to a stock with the new Packer is almost $1 million for $1 million with the new similar to something similar to this. So this one that we found were 700, and these are first come, first serve, so they don't hold it for us, and they pretty much go pretty fast. Otherwise, we're looking the same thing. If we order one, a custom one that we typically what we've done, we're looking at close to $1 million. Sandy Springs, I talked to the chief, they just ordered one similar to what we have currently, some of the engines. It's almost $1.1 million for that engine, because they're not going with stock, they're going with more of a customized engine built. And they're looking at a 3-year delivery. So we're going the route we want to save money, and so a stock engine will work for us just as well. We have to adapt. I think it's reasonable for $700,000. So we looked at a deployment by how can we leverage and not buy that ladder truck. So what we're going to do is what we call a ladder tender concept. It's been used in other places in the country. I've personally worked on one in Arizona early on in my career, where we will take the reserve E1 ladder that we have out of reserve, and we would put it at station 44 with the engine. And we would co-man that, so no additional staffing is required. So essentially, if we have a fire, if we have a big commercial fire in the Highway 9 Deerfield area, they would take the appropriate apparatus for that. So in a sense, it saves miles on both, because they'll be running the engines for medical calls, some of the regular car wrecks, accidents, and then for fire calls, they will take the actual ladder. So it gives us that water flow for those big commercial structures. It requires an investment, obviously, in purchasing. We already have, and part of our cancer prevention program, our staff already have 2 sets of turnout gears, but they don't have 2 sets of boots of helmets. So for that model to work effectively, we would have to equip all our firefighters with a second set of fire boots and second set of helmets. Because when they come in the morning at station 45, they'll put all their gears on the engine, on the ladder. So the only thing they'll need if they need to take the ladder truck is just their radios, which they have on them. So the ladder will be fully stocked, ready to go. So that's a model, that's the ladder tender model. Phoenix, Arizona, 28 cities in that metro consortium that we have in Phoenix that we had. It's 28 cities. They all use that model, and it works very good. So it saves miles, it saves the wear and tear on the engines, because you're using both versus just a ladder truck. And that's what we call the ladder tender concept. So meaning you have an engine and a ladder, and you take the appropriate resource to the fire. So we would develop that policy, obviously, that standard operating guideline. So that costs for adding second suit of boots, helmets, and as well as an SCBA mask, because we don't want somebody to forget their masks to take it from this engine to put it on a ladder. So we would have to have a second set of masks, which is in line with best practices for cancer prevention, is you want to have 2 sets of masks, because if they go to a fire, typically take them out of service, they'll wash their gear, they'll put their other set of gear on, they'll wash their masks, they'll have it ready. So that cost is $82,170. And then purchasing, obviously, equipment to outfit the E1 reserve ladder with everything, medical, EMS, fire equipment, that's $96,000. So the total CIP cost is $733,000. That $33,000 is for the paint, to get our paint scheme to match our fleet, the Milton standard. That's the only thing really we're getting customized. Other than that, we take it as is, the way it is. And then the equipment for firefighters, the E1, obviously, and the stock engine will buy, total will be 300. So the total approximate is about $1,033,000 for this project, but we would save the city about $900,000. And just to add, we're going to sell one of our reserve engines, which is 16 years old, and that probably could bring us about 45 to 50,000 based on the last one that we sold. We also got a North Fulton discount, Chiefs discount. We're leveraging our region to get some discounts, and that will be 16,000. And then the delivery for the stock engine, because it's already being built, it's 3 to 6 months, versus if we ordered a custom engine, that will take us about 3 years. The reason there's just the market, the demand, there's so much demand, the ARPA funds, a lot of communities got the ARPA funds, a lot of communities are coming up on replacement of their fleet. We do have a fleet replacement. So at this rate, we wouldn't have to replace our engines until 2030, when we would have to replace one, and then 2035, I believe, is when we'd have to replace all of them. And we have an apparatus replacement plan, and we can share that with you as well. So this is just an example of standard operating procedure. It talks about the ladder tender response. So we would have a similar policy that governs that. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer questions.
You're saying 1.9 million is what we're going to have to purchase anyway for Station 45. You're just getting ahead of the curve with this, and we're going to spend $1 million bucks.
Yes, and I want to share something else with you just to put it sort of in perspective with so this is straight from the manufacturer. This is the list they sent us of the apparatus. And as you could see, for example, here, these are the pumpers. So we have the Enforcer that we use. We even looked at the Sabre, which is a cheaper version, but those are gone. And you could see that what it says, Cummings, this is a stock 600, I don't have my glasses, but 803. There is I want to show you with the new Packer, where it says right here, Packer 510. This is a stock engine, which is item 39432, 979,000. This is just for a stock engine. So this is not a custom, which we typically do, because when we custom, they customize our cabinets, they put airbags all around, all kinds of things, different braking systems. I think, to me, it's an engine, a stock engine will just do the job just as good. So for the price, and that's why I say we wouldn't have to replace any apparatus until 2030 when we would start to replace one. That would leave us with 2 reserve. If we sell that one, leave us with a reserve Quint, which is also 16 years old, but also it gives us also another engine that's also 16. But they're well maintained, and our apparatus replacement is really not based on years; it's based on mileage. And we don't put a lot of miles on our fire trucks, so they would last us 15, 16 years. That long before we would have to replace. So in our replacement plan, and this is also by purchasing this engine for $700, it allows us to reduce our CIP, what we put away every year, from $560,000 to $500,000 every year, to be ready for the apparatus, because the engines are going to be coming up on replacement in 2030, between 2030 and 2035. Yeah, all the current existing engines. Just looking at different ways to save money and leverage what we have.
Good to be proactive at this. Y'all got any questions for Chief?
No, I don't.
I guess my question is if dollars weren't an object here, would you rather have the Quint? Would the Quint put us in a better position long-term?
Absolutely, because it's a versatile, because it's an engine / a ladder. It's a multi-tool, yes. At just that cost at 1.9, I mean, I couldn't even believe it that the same Quint that we bought 2 years ago, that we ordered 2 years ago, went from 1.3 to 1.9. But yes, it would, if it was not an object, yes, it would be. And that's why we wanted to leverage because the E1 that we have, the ladder that we have, is only 6 years old. So it's really in great shape. And it's that's why we wanted to use it in tandem with the engine. It just doesn't have a pump, so we would have to use both of them. But yes, the Quint would be better. But with using the ladder over at the 9 corridor also helps us with our ISO. It gives us our ladder coverage, where the last ISO rating that we did, we got 0 points for the ladder, because our ladder was outside of the city. It was based in Alpharetta. So we got 0 points. Having the ladder in Crabapple covers this area, so it's within the mileage, also within the response. And having another ladder within the Highway 9 corridor, commercial mid-rise apartments, also helps us with our ISO. So we're hoping that once we open 45, we'll do another assessment, and we hope to move from a ISO class 2 to ISO class 1. And the location of 45, that was based on the analysis that we did and the data that we crunched, and that was the best plan for. And just to let you know, and I'll present this later on, we've reduced our response times over the last year by 20.8% from last year. So we went from an average of 8 minutes to about 6 something. So
That's good, Chief.
All right, any other questions for Chief? Okay, I'll open it for a motion or any public comment.
There are none, sir.
Okay.
Mayor, make a motion that we approve agenda item number 23-169.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Moore and a second from Councilmember Cookerly to approve agenda item number 23-169. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that's unanimous.
thank you very much.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
All right, move on to council
Order it,
reports.
chief.
He's got the phone tomorrow
Or you-
morning.
Call that number, order that truck right now.
I'm gonna text him right now.
Don't use all those Amex points now. All right, it's the citizens. All right. Any council reports? Okay. With that, we'll move on to executive session to discuss personnel, land acquisition, and potential litigation. Do I have a motion?
Moved.
Do I have a second? Okay, that was Councilmember Moore, second from Johnson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
reconvene.
I make a motion. Second.
Got Morgan Moore, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Got a motion. And Morgan Moore, all in favor, say aye. Aye. So Morgan Moore, every time.